I was drinking coffee in the workshop when her message came through. I'm done. I've moved on. Don't look for me. I stared at the words. The workshop smelled of sawdust and cold metal. My hand tightened around the mug knuckles, whitening. Sierra was gone. I thought of her laugh in this room, her hands on my shoulders as I tightened bolts. The echo of her perfume still lingered. Gone. Cameron, my best friend, was the one she ran to. The man I trusted to hold the other end of the plank to share a beer after long days. His name was now tied to hers. I took a breath, deep and cold, the smell of oil and rust filling my lungs. I didn't rage. I didn't call. I let the silence speak for me. This is Lucas Doyle, and this is where my story begins. Where in the U.S. are you listening from? Subscribe for the next twist in this family betrayal. I grew up in Grand Junction, Colorado, a small town where everyone knew your name and your family's business. I worked as an electrical systems engineer on the rail lines. Hard work, hands stained with grease, shoulders tight from days hunched over switchboards. My wife Sierra was the bright one, the one who always had a smile for everyone. She worked in marketing, spinning dreams with words. She said my silence was part of my charm. I thought her laughter was my fuel. We met at a summer fair. She spilled sweet tea on my boots. I helped her wipe it off. She said it was fate. I believed her. Years later, we married in a small chapel on Main Street, the kind with creaky wooden pews and windows that caught the sun just right. Cameron was there, my best friend since high school. He was the kind of guy who made everyone feel seen. He cracked jokes that lightened every room. After the wedding, he gave me a handshake, his other hand heavy on my shoulder. "Take care of her, Lucas," he said. "I will," I promised. And I meant it. We built a life together in a craftsman house on Sycamore Lane. 2 stories. Red brick. A wraparound porch where Sierra liked to drink coffee on Sunday mornings. The maple out front caught every shade of autumn. It was ours. Until it wasn't. The first crack appeared 2 years ago. Sierra started spending weekends in Denver, she said, for yoga retreats. She'd come back calmer, smiling like nothing happened. I trusted her. That's what marriage is, right trust. Cameron visited more often in those months. He'd knock on the workshop door, always with a six-pack in hand. "Lucas, you're working too hard," he'd say, cracking open a bottle. "Someone has to," I'd reply, half smile, half truth. The workshop smelled of pine dust and old sweat. That's where I felt grounded. That's where I felt safe. Sierra's perfume used to linger in the air here, a scent like vanilla and fresh rain. But in those last months it was gone, replaced by the scent of metal oil and an edge of something sharp. Something I couldn't name then, something I understand now. I'd see them together, Sierra and Cameron, laughing in the yard. She'd brush his shoulder, too casual. He'd lean closer than he should. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I wasn't ready. I thought if I worked harder, if I stayed steady, they'd see. They'd remember. But the truth was already written in the pauses. In the way her laughter no longer reached me. In the way he always had a reason to stay late. That's where it began. The shift from love to betrayal. The shift from home to a house full of echoes. The night she left, the night she sent that message, I realized I wasn't just losing a wife. I was losing the last piece of a life I thought was solid, a life built on trust that turned out to be made of glass. The day after her message, I sat in the workshop. The air was cool, the smell of cut pine and motor oil thick around me. I stared at the corner where her coffee mug still sat, lipstick smudge on the rim. I picked it up, ran my thumb over the edge. Silence. I checked the accounts that afternoon. Sierra had always said she wasn't good with numbers. That's why she left them to me. But she'd learned enough. $70,000 gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. No warning, no explanation. I sat at the kitchen table, the screen glowing blue in the dusk. My breath sounded loud in the empty room. The maple outside the window was a blur of red and gold. Beautiful, indifferent. Cameron's name came up on the paperwork. I stared at it for a long time. His signature next to hers. Joint ownership. A house in Denver, far from here. They didn't even try to hide it. That stung more than the money, more than the betrayal. They thought I wouldn't see. They thought I wouldn't care. I closed the laptop, the soft click of the lid loud in the quiet. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes. I listened. The world didn't stop. The world didn't care. I took a slow breath, the scent of old varnish grounding me. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to watch. I was going to see how far they'd go. And I was going to make sure they knew when the time came that I'd seen everything. 2 nights later, I sat in the living room, the soft hum of the fridge, the only sound. I logged into the security system I'd installed last winter. It was supposed to be for safety. Now it was for something else. The footage was there. Cameron in my driveway, helping Sierra carry boxes. Their laughter low and easy, like it was their home now, like I was a ghost in the corners. I watched as Sierra paused, looked back at the house. A flicker of something crossed her face. Regret, relief, I couldn't tell. Cameron reached out his hand at her waist. She leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. A pause line. A breath caught in my throat. I saved the clip, labeled it with the date and time. A record. Proof. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I needed it. The next day I saw Cameron in town. He smiled like he always did. That same easy grin, the one that used to make everyone feel at ease. "Lucas," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You holding up okay?" I nodded, kept my voice calm. "Yeah," I said. "Things change." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "They do." We stood there, the air heavy between us. The maple leaves skittered across the pavement, dry and brittle. He shifted his weight hands in his pockets. I saw the watch on his wrist, a gift from me years ago. Now it felt like a mark of my own blindness. I watched him walk away, the echo of his steps in my mind. The footage was safe. The truth was safe. And I was done pretending. The house was empty when I got home that night. The smell of old coffee and cold air filled the kitchen. I poured myself a drink, the ice cracking like old bones. I sat at the table, the laptop open in front of me. I searched the property records, fingers steady on the keys. The Denver house, the one they'd bought together. Both their names on the deed. No shame, no hesitation. I stared at the screen, the black letters spelling out the truth. Sierra's signature flowing and soft. Cameron's sharp and sure. I remembered the day I bought this house. The way Sierra clung to my arm, the way she said this was home. I wondered if she'd said the same thing to Cameron, if he'd believed her the way I did. The air felt tight in my chest, but I kept reading. The sale had been finalized 2 weeks ago. While I was working overtime on the rail lines, they were signing papers. Building a life that didn't include me. I closed the laptop, the silence heavy in the room. The wind outside made the old windows creak. I listened. I didn't want to feel, but I did. I thought about how easy it had been for them, how they'd laughed while they moved my life into boxes, how they'd planned this in whispers I never heard. I stood up the floorboards, cold under my bare feet. I walked through the house, touching the things we'd chosen together. The dent in the hallway from when we moved the couch. The scratch in the door frame where she'd hung our first Christmas wreath. All of it theirs now. But I had the footage. I had the truth. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning I woke early. The workshop was cold, the metal tools biting against my skin. I sat at the old stool, the hum of the heater filling the silence. I plugged in my headphones, tapped the file on my phone. The audio feed from the cameras. The one I never told Sierra about. Voices crackled through the static. Cameron's low and confident, Sierra's softer, almost hesitant. He told her this was for the best. He told her I'd understand in time. I closed my eyes, the words settling like dust. Sierra laughed, the sound I used to love. She said she felt free. She said I'd been holding her back. A pause, a breath. Then she whispered, "He'll never know, will he?" Cameron's voice was a promise. "No," he said. "He'll never see it coming." I took the headphones out, the cold of the room seeping into my bones. The world outside was bright, the first light of dawn catching the frost on the window. It felt cruel somehow, the beauty of it. I stood the floor creaking under my weight. In the hallway I found the old family photo. The three of us at the lake, arms around each other. Cameron's hand on my shoulder, Sierra leaning into me. A lie caught in a frame. I put the photo face down. Let the silence fill the space it left behind. Later that day I watched them from the footage. Sierra in the kitchen, stirring coffee like nothing had changed. Cameron leaning against the counter, his smile easy, his hand brushing her hip. She looked at him the way she used to look at me. And I realized then it wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the house. It was the way they'd stolen my life piece by piece while I wasn't looking. I wasn't going to let it go. I wasn't going to let them decide how this ended. I drove out of town that night. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark. The tires hummed a steady rhythm. I needed answers. I needed the truth. I pulled into the gravel lot behind an old bar where I knew he'd be. The man who'd wired the cameras for me last winter. Mason. A friend or so, I thought. He looked up from his drink when I walked in. His eyes shifted just for a second. Then he smiled. "Lucas," he said. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." I sat across from him, the table sticky with spilled beer. "I need to know," I said. "Did Cameron talk to you? Did he pay you to look the other way?" He laughed, a hollow sound. "Come on, man. You're seeing ghosts." I stared at him. The lines around his mouth twitched. I knew that look. I'd seen it in the mirror too many times. A lie coiled and ready. "Don't lie to me, Mason," I said, my voice low, steady. "You wired the cameras. You know what they've been doing. Did you tell them about the backup system?" His smile faded. He picked at the label on his bottle. "Look, Lucas," he said finally. "Cameron said you wouldn't care. He said you'd roll over like you always do. He gave me a little cash to make sure the footage was temporary." The words hit like a fist to the gut. Not just them. Not just Sierra and Cameron. Even Mason. Someone I trusted. I stood my chair scraping loud against the floor. He reached out, but I stepped back. The smell of stale beer and old wood filled my nose. I didn't look at him again. Outside, the cold air slapped my face. I took a breath, let it burn in my chest. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd break. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what silence can hide. I drove home in the dark, the night pressing close, and I promised myself I wouldn't stop. Not until they saw what I saw. I spent the next day in the workshop. The tools were lined up neat and silent. The sawdust smelled sharp in the cold air. I pulled out the hard drive, the one I'd hidden away, a backup of every moment they thought they erased, every touch, every secret smile. I watched the footage again, the way Sierra looked at Cameron, the way he leaned in close, the way they thought the world was theirs. I let it play frame by frame, my fingers steady on the keyboard, the hum of the heater in the corner a low rhythm. Outside, the maple tree's branches scraped against the window, a slow, patient whisper. I didn't rush. I didn't let the anger rise. I cataloged every detail, their voices, their lies. I made sure the truth was clear. Then I set my own trap. I sent a single clip to Sierra's phone, a moment of her and Cameron captured in perfect detail. I didn't say a word, just a file, a name she'd know. I watched the message send the quiet ping of delivery. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. I wanted her to wonder. I wanted her to feel that same cold in her chest. Another message. "Lucas, we need to talk." Pause. "Please, call me." Pause. I put the phone down. The workshop smelled of old varnish and metal. I let the silence stretch. I let her sweat. I wasn't done. Not yet. The footage was safe. The truth was mine. And when I was ready, I would show them. I would show them all. The house was quiet that night. The walls seemed to breathe around me, every creak and groan echoing in my chest. I sat in the living room, the glow of the lamp throwing long shadows across the floor. The footage played on my laptop, the sound turned low. Their laughter, their secrets. I watched every second. I memorized every flicker of guilt in Sierra's eyes, every smirk on Cameron's face. The truth was a slow burn in my veins. I let it fill me. I thought about the years I'd given her, the nights I'd stayed late at work so she could chase her dreams, the weekends I spent fixing the old house so she'd feel safe. Every promise I made, every word I kept, all of it empty now. I remembered my father's voice steady and low. "Son, trust is a choice. So is what you do when it breaks." I understood that now. I printed the most damning images, sliding each one into a folder. Cameron's hand at her waist. Sierra's smile that didn't reach her eyes. Proof. Cold. Undeniable. The printer hummed in the dark, a steady pulse. Outside, the wind rattled the old maple tree. I could almost hear the leaves whispering against the glass, telling me to keep going, telling me to see this through. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. The burn of it steadied my hands but not my heart. I thought about calling her demanding the truth. But what was the point? She'd given me her truth already in every file, every lie she thought she could hide. I walked through the house, my footsteps soft on the wood floors. Every room carried a memory, her laughter in the kitchen, her perfume in the bedroom. I paused at the workshop door, hand resting on the old brass handle. This was the line, the place I chose to stand. No more waiting, no more hoping. I wasn't the man who begged. I wasn't the man who forgot. I opened the door, the smell of sawdust and cold metal wrapping around me. This was mine. This was what I'd built. I took the folder, the backup drive, and I placed them on the workbench, a quiet promise to myself. I looked in the mirror above the tool rack. The lines on my face seemed deeper, my eyes steady dark with something new. Resolve, final. I turned off the light and stepped outside. The cold night air bit at my skin, the sky clear and full of stars. I took a breath. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt ready. This was the point of no return, and I wasn't going back. I woke before dawn, the workshop already cold. My breath fogged in the beam of my desk lamp. I spread the documents across the workbench, each photo, each printout, a testament. The drive was small, almost nothing in my palm, but it held everything. I sipped black coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. I watched the footage one last time, each scene searing into memory. No more questions, no more doubts. I started with Sierra. I drafted a message short, precise. No accusations, no explanations. Just a single file attached, a clip of her and Cameron, their laughter caught in my workshop's cold eye. I sent it to her personal email, the one she used when she wanted to hide. I imagined her face when she saw it, the flush in her cheeks, the panic in her eyes. My phone buzzed an hour later. Her name lit up the screen over and over. I let it ring, the vibration steady against my palm. Then silence. I pictured her sitting in her new kitchen, the one she thought was safe. I pictured Cameron's face when she showed him the message. I wondered if he'd keep his easy smile then. I waited. 2 hours. 3. The sun rose slow outside the window, catching the frost on the old maple. I watched the light shift, felt the cold metal of the tools in my hands. Steady, certain. When her voice finally broke the quiet, it was hoarse, urgent. "Lucas, we need to talk. Please. It's not what you think." I didn't answer. I let her words hang in the air, like the echo of her laughter in those stolen moments. Instead, I called my lawyer. A woman named Marla, sharp-eyed and calm. She'd helped me once before when I needed to secure the house in my name. She listened as I spoke, her voice low and certain. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "I do," I said. "More than enough." "Good," she said. "We'll start with that. And Lucas, don't contact her again. Let the evidence speak." I nodded even though she couldn't see. The air felt clearer after I hung up, like the workshop itself was holding its breath with me. I cleaned the workbench, each tool back in its place. I looked at the camera feed one last time. Cameron and Sierra gone now. Just an empty room waiting. I knew what I had to do next. Not just protect what was mine, but show them what they'd never seen in me. Patience, purpose, and a silence that wasn't surrender, but a promise. The next step was mine alone. I drove into town before noon, the courthouse steps cold under my boots. I filed the papers, a restraining order against Sierra and Cameron, and a claim on the property they thought was theirs. The clerk didn't ask questions, just stamped the forms and passed them back. The echo of the stamp sounded final, like the closing of a door. I walked out into the winter sun, the air sharp and clean. I felt the weight in my chest lighten, like the first deep breath after a long silence. Back home, I set the files in a fireproof box, each page a quiet blade. The footage, the bank records, the messages, the story of what they'd done. I thought about Sierra's eyes when she realized I wasn't begging. I thought about Cameron's smirk, the one he wore like a shield. They thought they'd won. They thought my silence was surrender, but silence can be a weapon too. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice, smooth, too confident. "Lucas," he said, "you don't want to drag this out. Let's settle this quietly." I leaned back in my chair, the workshop dim around me. You mean quietly for you, I said. A pause. Think about what you're risking, he said. You're alone in this. I smiled into the phone, my fingers tapping the hard drive on the bench. I'm not alone, I said. You've just never seen me clearly. I ended the call the click final. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the old windows like bones. I spent the next hours drafting one final message, not to them, but to the bank, the realtor, the notary, anyone who'd touched the paper trail of this theft. I sent the proof, each attachment a nail in the coffin. I didn't need to shout. The truth was loud enough. In the stillness that followed, I cleaned the workshop, wiped every tool, set every bolt in place. The smell of oil and old pine sharpened my nose. I thought of the years I spent building this life. The sweat, the nights alone, the sacrifices. I thought of Sierra's smile the day we signed the mortgage, the promise in her eyes. I thought of Cameron's laugh at my wedding, the way he toasted me like a brother. The past was done. The future was mine to shape now, and I would build it stronger. The workshop fell silent, but in that silence was something new. Not emptiness, not defeat, but space. Space to start again. And when the sun rose tomorrow, I would face it with nothing left to hide. The sun rose pale and cold. I woke before it crested the ridge, the quiet of dawn heavy in my chest. The message came at 7. Sierra's name on the screen, a single line, Lucas, please. We need to talk. I didn't reply. The silence was stronger than any answer. She tried again, calling this time, her voice soft and cracked. Lucas, I didn't mean for it to be this way. I let the phone ring out, the workshop's chill steady around me. She could beg. She could cry. But I was done listening. I spent the morning at the courthouse, filing the last of the paperwork. Each document a piece of armor, each signature a wall between us. The clerk stamped them, the sound final and clean. I walked out into the winter air, my breath white against the cold. I stopped at the old diner on Main Street, ordered black coffee, watched the world pass by outside the window. I thought about everything that had brought me here. The lies, the betrayal, the years I spent trying to be enough. The truth was clear now. I'd never been the problem. They were. My phone buzzed on the table. Cameron this time, his number flashing like a challenge. I answered. His voice was low measured. Lucas, we're not your enemies. Let's settle this like men. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. I'm done talking, I said. A pause. You're making a mistake, he said. You're alone in this. I set my cup down, my voice calm. I'm not alone, I said. You're just afraid I'm not afraid anymore. He hung up, the silence ringing in my ear. I paid the check, left a tip, and stepped out into the wind. By noon, the lawyer called. She'd seen the footage, read the bank statements. We have everything we need, she said. Let them come. We're ready. I drove home, the sky wide and cold above me. The house waited, the workshop quiet. Inside, I laid out the final set of papers. The footage drive sat on top, small and black, a record of everything they'd done. I took a breath. This was it, the end of the old story, the beginning of something else, and I wasn't afraid. That evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sierra standing there, her hair pulled back, eyes red. She held herself small, like she could make herself disappear. Lucas, she said, her voice barely more than a breath. I need to explain. I stepped aside, led her into the hallway where the light was cold. She looked around, taking in the familiar walls, the photos still hanging, the life we'd built together. Her hands trembled. I never meant to hurt you, she said. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I didn't answer. I let her words hang in the air like smoke from a dying fire. She reached for me, but I stepped back, the echo of her betrayal too loud to ignore. I loved you, she whispered. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But I felt trapped. Cameron. He said he'd take care of everything. He said you'd be okay. I looked at her, then really looked. The woman I'd given everything to. The woman who'd sold me out for a smile and a promise. I saw everything I said. My voice was steady cold. I saw you choose him. I saw you laugh with him. And I saw you leave me behind. She sank into the chair by the window, her shoulders shaking. I was scared, she said. I didn't know how to tell you. I watched her for a moment, the light from the lamp catching in her tears. Then I picked up the folder, placed it on the table between us. Here's everything I said. The footage, the transfers, the lies. You don't have to tell me anymore. I already know. She reached for the folder, but I pulled it back. This isn't for you, I said. It's for the court. For the truth. She looked up at me, her face crumpling. Please, Lucas, don't do this. We can fix it. I shook my head, the final weight of the years falling away. No, I said. I'm done fixing what you broke. She stood, her shoulders straightening as she wiped her tears. I'm sorry, she said again, but the words were empty. I opened the door, the winter wind, cold and clean on my face. She stepped out, her footsteps fading down the porch steps. I watched her go, the silence of the night wrapping around me. I closed the door, locked it tight. The workshop waited. The maple outside stood tall and bare, its branches etching the night sky. I took a breath. The fallout was done. The truth was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt free. A week later, I stood in the workshop, the old wood walls silent, the tools neatly in place. The winter sun shone low through the window, catching the dust in the air, turning it gold. The town was quiet, whispers of what had happened, fading as the days passed. Sierra and Cameron were gone. Their plans turned to dust under the weight of the truth. I spent the days cleaning the house, packing away what didn't matter anymore. The wedding photos, the little reminders of a life that wasn't real. Each box felt lighter than the last. I found an old frame behind the bookshelf, a picture of me on the day I bought this house. The pride in my eyes was still there, and I realized that part of me hadn't changed. I took the picture to the workshop, set it on the workbench. This place was mine. It had always been mine. The smell of sawdust and cold metal was familiar, honest. One morning I walked down to the river, the water slow and silver under the frost. I stood on the bank, hands deep in my pockets, and let the cold seep into my bones. I thought about the years I'd given her, the nights I spent alone, the dreams I'd let go for the sake of a life we'd shared. I thought about the lies and how they'd felt like truth once. But I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I'd seen the worst of it, and I was still here. I still had my work, the quiet hum of the workshop, the steady rhythm of the rails. I still had my name, and that was enough. The town would forget in time. People always do, but I wouldn't. Not because of anger, but because the lesson was too clear. Trust is a choice. So is what you do when it breaks. Outside, the maple tree stood bare, its branches reaching for the pale sky. I watched it sway in the wind, steady and silent. Nothing left but silence. Nothing left but me. I walked back to the workshop, closed the door behind me. The world outside could spin and break, but in here I was whole. Where in the U.S. are you listening from? What would you do if your best friend and wife betrayed you? Subscribe if you believe in karma.